Check out FlipsideGaming.com for all your gaming needs. Use the promo code HEROES to save 10% on all orders over $10 and support the channel at the same time. Hey there, this is John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to part 3 of our 6-part Dominaria Limited Set review. Today we're going to look at all of the cards in black and some of the multicolor cards. Now, if you've been watching the series, you kind of know what to expect. We looked at white, we've looked at blue. We're going to talk about all these cards individually. We're also going to talk about what black does as a whole for draft and sealed and how they interact with the other colors. And when we get to the individual cards, we'll also make mention where they're going to work best for you and their overall power level. Now, quickly before we get started, just a really fast reminder, if you check out the description below, you'll find a few ways to help support what we do here at the channel. One of which is our Patreon page. Another is our Amazon product links that you'll find down there. If you make any purchases on Amazon, no matter what it is, once you go through that first link, we'll get a small percentage for the channel. And also Flipside Gaming, still offering a promo code for our viewers. Hopefully save some cash while you support the channel. And again, thank you to everybody, not just the folks that look at those links, but to all the viewers. You all help this channel out immensely. And with that being said, let's get into it. Alright, so let's talk about the color black first, what it's trying to do. And black is actually a pretty sweet color. It's doing a few different things. Reanimation is definitely something black is interested in. You're going to see that as we go through here. Also, sacrificing for benefit, an aristocrat style strategy is something you're going to see here as well. So how does black interact with the other colors for your drafts or for even your seal pools? Because, yeah, archetypes are a little more important for draft, granted, but it's still really good to know the synergies when you're looking at your seal pool as well. It helps you make better decisions. So let's talk a little white-black first. We did mention this in the video a couple days ago, but the synergy here is Knight Tribal. You're going to find a lot of knights, things that are going to buff knights. You're going to find a lot of support for the tribe. Black and blue. Now this pairing is going to work best when you're milling yourself with the blue to give black the advantages of having things in the graveyard. It's not just about reanimation. Also just bringing, say, creatures back to your hand is something black can do as well. Red and black, Rakdos colors. Now, they're typically aggro, and they still are. However, you're going to notice here there is an aristocrat's direction that these colors are going in. You're going to be able to sacrifice a lot of small creatures, maybe some goblins, for value. And finally, black and green, and similar things are going on here, because instead of goblins, you have sapperlings, another way to create tokens, sacrifice things for value. Also, too, green's interested in getting lands in the graveyard. That's how these two interact. Not to mention, green's going to give you some ramp, and there are some cards in black that definitely want to be powered out faster that have higher casting costs. You'll see that as we go through today. Now, let's get into the individual cards. And we'll begin with Blessing of Belzenlock. Okay, this is a very good combat trick. It's an instant speed, just costs 1, and there's a lot of legendary creatures. We've been talking about it all week, so if you play this on a legendary creature, wonderful. You get lifelink as well. Even if you don't, that combat trick is going to be just fine for you considering how fast and how cheap it is. And sometimes you just don't have enough removal spells in a pool, especially in sealed. This in a pinch works in lieu of a removal spell, sometimes can even be better than a removal spell. Cabal Evangel. Okay, 2/2 for 2 with no upside, but I'm okay with that. I know, we're a little spoiled recently with all the Grizzly Bears with upside. But you know what? A good old Grizzly Bear is still pretty good for limited purposes. That 2 spot in your curve is critically important. You want to make sure you have enough creatures, enough board presence. And if you have nothing else, this is going to be great for you. You're going to play this and actually be pretty happy with it most of the time. Cabal Paladin. Okay, now this one is a human knight, so take note for knight synergies. I'm not super thrilled with this card otherwise, though. If I'm not playing knights, I don't know if I play this. Granted, if I have a lot of historic spells, then this does get better, so I could see myself maybe being pulled in that direction too. But I don't like the fact that this is a 4/2 for 4. It usually trades down. It just doesn't feel very stable. I don't really think this is going to hang around very long unless it has other knight synergies around it typically. Now, also what's kind of cool about this is white not only works well with knights, but also works well with historic. So you may find other historic synergies if you're in those colors. Coleco Skin. This is kind of interesting because it's a wizard, which is more of an is-it thing in this set, but hey, if you need a wizard and happen to cross over into black, there you go. Aside from that, though, the card's not super exciting. It's a 1/3 for 2, maybe something I sideboard in if I'm up against a hyper-aggressive build to come up the ground a little bit. The kicker is a little expensive, I think, for what it's doing. I like to make my opponent discard 2 cards. I have no problem with that. But paying 2 black and 4 to do it and also getting a 1/3, I feel like I could be doing better things at that point in the game. So it is a little weird because later in the game, your opponent might not even like have things in their hand that are relevant some of the time, especially if they're more aggressive. Or maybe they do, and you can hit something that's great, but that's only going to work once, because game 2, game 3, they're going to start holding on to land so that they don't get caught by this again. So, you know, it's just one of those things that's middle of the road. There are times where you will use it, but it's not very exciting. Cast Down. This is awesome removal. I get it. Non-legendary creature, and there's tons of legendary creatures in the set. However, for 2 mana instant speed, I would still first pick this, because there's tons of good creatures that are not legendary. Chainer's Torment. This one I'm not crazy about. This is one of the sagas I don't feel great playing, because it costs 4, and I like the life swing. Like, that 1 and 2 is pretty good, actually. However, I just feel like I might get burned by that 3 if it resolves, because I make a big creature, sure, but I lose half my life, and it's a token creature with no, like, hexproof or protection or anything, so it could get bounced, not to mention destroyed. And I just feel like this is a gotcha. Like, my opponent has a couple turns even to kind of wait for this thing to come out before they get me. If they draw into like a bounce spell or removal spell, they'll just hang on to it, right? So, I don't know. This one I think telegraphs itself way too much, unfortunately. And the token doesn't even have evasion for all that work. Also, this is a real rough draw when you're behind. Dark Bargain. Now, this card's excellent. Instant speed, card draw, and selection. You go 3 deep into your graveyard. Forecasting cost, you're paying a little bit, but I'm fine with that. One of those cards I can throw in my graveyard. Again, there's relevancy there. 2 go to my hand, 2 damage, I'm fine with that. So even if I'm not interacting with the graveyard for some reason, I'm still getting to select my 2 best cards off the top 3 of my deck. That's great for 4 mana at instant speed. I can do that at the end of my opponent's turn sometimes, especially if I'm in like Dimir colors that could be relevant. Aside from that, if I want to reanimate, I might hit a reanimation target, maybe. If I'm in Golgari colors, there's ways to interact with lands that are going to the graveyard. So this card does everything black wants to do, and it's just a solid card just generally. Deathbloom Thallid. Okay, here's our first fungus of the day. This is actually a fine card. It's a 3/2 for 3, so yes, I get it. It does trade down, but when it dies, you do get a 1/1 green Saproling token. But it goes further than that, because again, between green and black, there are some Saproling synergies, so sometimes just having the token could be good. But maybe more importantly, you could sacrifice this to one of the things that will give you a benefit, which we'll be seeing a lot of in a few moments. And it will die, and you get another token, which you can also sacrifice. That's actually kind of awesome for what this color is trying to do, and you're going to see that as we go forward here. Demonic Vigor. This one's not real exciting to me. It's cheap, I'm going to give it that. It's great if you want to protect a creature that's really important to you. Like, you have some creature that is going to win you the game. You play this to try to be kind of a insurance policy, right? So it's fine, but am I taking up a spot in my deck for this? Because it is very narrow, very conditional. If I'm behind, this isn't doing a whole lot for me. Or if I play this and my opponent has the removal spell in their hand while this is on the stack, then yeah, nothing really happens. So it just doesn't feel really that useful. So yeah, I'm probably skipping this one most of the time. The one exception to that might be if I was all in on sacrificing creatures. This does give me a unique opportunity to sack something, then replay it to potentially sack it again. Demon Lord Belzenlock. Now, this card is an awesome mythic. You won't see it a lot, unfortunately, being a mythic, but if you do, and you can be in black, play this thing, because it's a 6/6 for 6 with flying and trample that replaces itself minimally. Minimally, this replaces itself and deals the damage to you. Sometimes you might even get another card, maybe even another card. It will do more damage, though, if that happens. But I'm not worried about that. I'm happy to grab cards if I can get them. So, now if you were running low on cards in a long, drawn-out game, I guess I could see where this might lead to a problem and maybe some counting lands moments for you. But I love how it goes past the lands to give you a spell generally. This is a fantastic card. First pickable, no doubt, if it does show up in a pack and draft. Divest. I like this one a lot too. Here's what I love about it. Target player reveals their hands. You choose an artifact or creature card from it. That player discards the card. So let's say I play it on my opponent. I get information. I see what's in their hands. And in the world of Limited, you know there's going to be a target here, right? There's going to be a lot of great creatures running around. Maybe an artifact, but definitely you're going to hit a creature most of the time, right? Now, the other thing I can do is I can play this on myself. And I can discard that reanimation target and put it into my graveyard for later. That's amazing. I love the versatility. It's cheap. It just does a lot. Dreadshade. Here's the 3 on color card of the cycle for black. And there is potential, maybe, in draft especially, to be able to go mono black. We are seeing pieces that could help with that here and there, and you'll definitely see them throughout the week. But that might be difficult to do. If you can pull it off, this card is amazing, though. If you can't pull that off, as long as your deck is at least 40% on color, you should be fine. I can get it out and pump it, even if it's just a little bit. It pumps power and toughness. You know, those red creatures that just pump power, a lot of times those are underwhelming because they trade down and they're not doing a lot other than eating your resources. This eats your resources, but is very, very stable while doing it. This card's really awesome. Another card that is first pickable, even though it's 3 on color, I think it's strong enough that I would take the risk on it. Drudge Sentinel. Okay, so this is a card that I'm not super hyped on. The quasi-regeneration ability costs a little too much at 3. I'm going to sideboard this in, though, if my opponent does have some big ground pounders and I want to be able to block them perpetually with something, then I might need this card. Other than that, it's not doing enough. The 2/1 stats aren't very impressive, and the ability is good but a little costly unless I'm in a situation where I can really take advantage of it. The Eldest Reborn. Now, this is a pretty cool saga. I like this one a lot. Each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker, so even if that's the only thing that happens for 5, that actually feels decent. Although, you know, later in the game, there could be a lot of options for someone to sack something that's not that important, granted. But wait, there's more. Number 2, each opponent discards a card. Okay, that's good. Again, they see that coming, though. They might hold on to a land or something if they don't need one. So that might not be the best thing in the world. But check out that 3. Put target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Any graveyard, so that includes your opponent's. Now, granted, when you play this, you probably want the target to already be there, either in your graveyard or the opponent's graveyard that you're interested in, because they're probably, if they can avoid it anyway, won't sacrifice or discard something great when they know this is coming. However, if there's something already there and you can get to the 3, well, wonderful. So yeah, this card's actually pretty sweet. Maybe a little high variance if they can blow it up, especially game 2 or game 3 if they sideboard against it. More so, even though there are some main deckable cards that also can get rid of sagas. But I'm not worried about that. I've said that all week. You know, you got to play your best cards. If it gets blown up, it gets blown up. At least these things will give you something when they hit the 1, if nothing else. Eviscerate. Okay, you know what? Another first pickable removal spell. Forecasting cost, it is sorcery speed a little slower, but destroy target creature? Yeah, sign me up. It's awesome. Feral Abomination. Here's kind of the big creature with Death Touch, which always makes me scratch my head a little bit. Not that it's bad, like I'd rather have Death Touch than not have Death Touch, but I don't want to pay another mana for the Death Touch, right? Like if this was a black and 4 for a 5/5, I'd be even happier. Now it is a Thrall, that's kind of cool. I'll give him points for that. Do you actually play this thing? Maybe in Sealed if you need a creature. Like this is something that I think a lot of times you're going to have better things when you're talking 6 mana. But if you need something that has substantial board presence, it's fine. Final Parting. Oh, Liliana's brother didn't last too long, did he? In fact, we haven't even seen him yet in the set review, so it's kind of sad. But anyway, the card's amazing. So basically, what you could do with this is if you have a reanimation target in your library, you could use this to get it in the graveyard, and you can tutor for your reanimation spell. That's awesome for 5 mana. Now, if you don't have that going on, there's still a lot of great things you can do with it. Again, there's other things that you can do, populating the graveyard. We talked about that with Golgari. There's other things in black that's relevant, like even just returning cards to your hand from the graveyard. There's value there. And aside from that, this is also tutoring. Now, we have seen that even in limited, tutoring for 5 can be a tad expensive, too expensive sometimes to always run. But if you have a good target that's important to you, yeah, sometimes it's still worth it. So regardless, if you have a trick, this is great. If you don't have a trick, it could still be runnable a lot of the time. Fungal Infection. This card actually reminds me a lot of Skullduggery. It's a little different the way it behaves, but it does similar things. And it actually is a little more in tune to what this set's trying to do. So I love Skullduggery. I would play these things all day. A lot of times I'll run a couple Skullduggeries in a deck, actually. They always do me well. And this one, it surprises your opponent. Sometimes it just blows up a 1 toughness creature. It gives you the 1/1 creature, actually, as opposed to giving something +1/+1 till end of turn. So that has a little more stable board presence, and it's something that is relevant. A Saproling token could be relevant with Golgari, or relevant if you want to sacrifice it for something. So it's actually a pretty sweet card. Josu Vess, Lich Knight. Here's Liliana's brother. He died a card ago, but you know what? This is still an awesome card regardless. This thing is fantastic and limited. Now, if you can't pay the kicker, most of the time, honestly, you're not going to be able to pay the kicker. And you get yourself a 4 or 5 minutes for 4, you're still going to be really, really happy. Now, if you can pay the kicker, you might just simply win the game. I mean, that's a huge effect right there. Now, like I said, there are some ways maybe to go mono black and perhaps push the mana a little bit. Golgari, of course, another option. A lot of ramp and green in this set. So there are some ways to get there. It is 3 black, though, if you do it. 3 black and 5 more, so a total of 3 black and 7. So that's quite a bit. But if you can pull it off, it's going to be amazing for you. And like I said, aside from that, it doesn't matter if you can't pull it off because the card on its own is good. It's also a knight, which could be relevant too. Kazarov, Sengir Pureblood. Another solid card. A little expensive, sure, but it's doing a lot. A 4/4 flyer, and if you have red available to you, being able to do 2 damage to target creature and giving this a +1/+1 counter in the process is actually pretty sweet. It can grow and also take out a lot of small creatures, damage larger creatures for combat situations. It's just very versatile. Once you get to that 7 casting cost, this thing will do some work for you if it can stick around. Also remember, if you don't have red available, just by playing magic, your opponent's creatures will take damage either in combat or due to other abilities, so this has great growth potential regardless. Knight of Malice, another strong 2-drop here. 2/2 for 2 with tons of upside attached to it. It's a knight, again, that will be relevant at times. First strike, hexproof from white. And oh, by the way, if you have a white permanent or your opponent has a white permanent, it's a 3/2 now. This card's pretty awesome. Yeah, I would play this all the time. Even if I don't have knight synergies, or even if I'm not running anything with white, I'm still going to run this. Lich's Mastery. Oh boy. So this card, let me tell you, this card right here, it can do some wacky things. This is a crazy card. Is it good and limited is today's question, though. We talked a lot about this card when it was previewed for like Commander and other formats. But what about limited? Do you ever really play this thing? I just feel like it's too high variance. Like, it costs 6, 3 on color, first off. And if my opponent has a way of hitting me enough that I have to sacrifice this, which sometimes I actually might have less permanents and cards available in my graveyard in hand than I would have had life, then I could just lose the game. Especially if I'm taking the turn off to play this and they're just building out their board state. So, I don't know. I just don't like it. I mean, granted, if I could make a lot of tokens or something, perhaps this gets a little bit better. It lets me get a little freer with my attacks and such. But I don't know. Or I can mill myself, but even then you can't mill yourself too much, or else you just kind of run out of cards, and eventually you can't, like, hit back because you don't have anything to draw. So, that just feels weird too. So, I don't know. Like, it's cool. Like, I love that they made this card, but I just can't see myself, like, legitimately playing this in Draft or Sealed. Maybe for fun, but not, like, trying to win. Lingering Phantom. This is good if you have historic spells to back it up. So maybe, again, in black-white or black-blue, where historic is going to matter a little more, or if you just draft a lot of artifacts, or just have a lot of targets, and those could be legendary or sagas, too. So if you do, I would run this. If you don't, it's not super impressive for 6 mana. Like a 5/4, if it's not being persistent and coming back every time it gets destroyed, then it's kind of like, what am I really doing for 6 mana here? It has no evasion. It's a spirit, but it doesn't fly. So, yeah, it's just kind of a big, dumb ground pounder that just feels too fragile with 4 toughness considering the casting cost. Now, one other use for this is as a creature, you might be able to sacrifice more than once during a game. That is an expensive plan, though, considering each time it would cost you 1 to recur and then 6 to cast. So it does fit into some builds, like I said, but many times you'll skip it. Phyrexian Scriptures. Now, this one's a mythic, and it's a good one. Okay, so you're paying 4 mana, and you get to put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature, and that creature becomes an artifact creature. So that's not great for 4 mana, but as you move on, destroy all non-artifact creatures. That's huge. Basically a board sweep. Now, it is conditional, so like it's going to destroy your stuff that's not artifacts, obviously, but at least you made 1 creature an artifact, so you keep your best thing, hopefully. And then aside from that, your opponent hopefully doesn't have artifact creatures out. And then after that, the third is kind of neither here nor there. It's going to be relevant some of the time. Exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. Sometimes they'll be good, but probably most of the time it might be inconsequential. So if they're not in black or even green, it would probably be inconsequential. Now, before I run this, I just treat this basically like a Wrath of God, where I'm going to hopefully be able to keep a good creature. And I realize there's some high variance. This isn't as consistent as just a Wrath of God or a Damnation, right? But it's close enough that I'm going to run this and be completely happy with it. If I fall behind, it is a panic button that I will be ready to use. If I'm ahead, okay, it's a dead draw, but that's just the nature of board sweeps. This could be really good if you can draft a lot of artifact creatures, though. On the flip side, if your opponent did, be ready to side it out. Rat Colony. Alright, this is a fun card. Now, in Limited, you can already have any number of a card in your deck, so unfortunately that doesn't really change anything. So, the big question, do you play this thing? In Sealed, probably not. Like, most of the time, I think you get maybe 1 copy, considering this is a large set. That's just not enough. 2 copies, probably not enough. Maybe 3, but I can't imagine a situation where 3 of these will be maybe better than most things I have in a Sealed pool. Where this shines, perhaps, is draft a little bit, especially if you go more aggro. So this is a situation where you just want to pick up these whenever you see them and hope you're the only one at the table doing it. If you're not, it might not end well, and you just might throw away a lot of picks, and that's not good. But if you are, if you're the one person doing it, and you have a bunch of these in your deck, and you can go hyper aggro, maybe a little Rakdos, then, yeah, this is good. I wouldn't consider it a win condition. You want to have other win conditions in your deck, but it might get some early damage across. These things are super fragile. They don't go beyond 1 toughness. A lot of times they're going to trade, maybe trade up, though, which is kind of good. But at the same time, just be prepared that you can't win on rats alone, probably. At least not in a draft sealed situation. So, yeah, it kind of is what it is. But it could be a fun utility card. I'd at least want to try to make it work at some point. Rite of Belzenlok. I like this quite a bit. For 4 mana, I start off by getting 2/0/1 black cleric tokens, which means I can sacrifice those to a lot of different things in black. Second time, I get 2 more. That's great. Third time, I'm going to get a 6/6 black demon creature token with flying and trample. However, at the beginning of the upkeep, I do have to sacrifice a creature to it. Another creature. It can't sack itself to itself. So I have to sack that or else it's going to do 6 damage to me. Now, the good news is it doesn't tap or anything, so I can still attack with it. And even if I run out of creatures to sack for some reason, I might be able to win the race still, considering this is a 6/6 flying trample creature. So this is really sweet for 4 mana. Like, sign me up. Even again, if something happened to the card before it got to 3, just getting the tokens could be good just due to the synergies in black. Settle the score. Okay, if you're lucky enough to open a Planeswalker in Sealed or Draft, well, kudos to you and play this. You'll love it. But you know what? Still play it. You're going to love it because it's sorcery speed, exile target creature. Exile, again, always better than destroy. So, yeah, this is very runnable and still first pickable in draft, even with no Planeswalkers. Soul Salvage. This is another card that really plays into the idea of populating the graveyard for benefit. Return 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. So it's not always about reanimation. Sometimes it's about just getting value out of like the self-mill, or just having to throw cards in your graveyard at some point, or maybe you sacrifice creatures, bringing them back. Or you just played Fair Magic and you lost them in combat situations, and here's a card that's bringing you 2 cards back to your hand. Pretty good for 3 mana, even at sorcery speed. I like cards like this. I usually try to play at least one of them when I can. Stronghold Confessor. Here's the deal with this card. At face value, a 1/1 for 1, it's not very exciting, right? The kicker's okay. It's not amazing, but it's okay. You can potentially make this a black and 3 menace 3/3. Okay, that's still very playable in maybe aggro decks. Perhaps you're in Rakdos or something. Now, the real appeal of this card, though, I think, is the fact that you can play this as a 1-drop and use it as sacrifice fodder. So it does give you kind of the either-or. You can either sack it to something for benefit, or you can maybe play it a little bit later and have a card that might actually do some damage on the battlefield. So it's actually pretty versatile. If I'm not in the market to sacrifice for benefits, then I might not play this card unless I'm really trying to go aggro, and that's the case. The menace might actually do me well. So yeah, it's okay. I would play it probably a good percentage of the time. Valid Omnivore. Okay, this is a fungus that lets you sacrifice things to it for benefit. It does cost a mana to sacrifice something. That's a little disappointing. Also can't sacrifice itself. But anyway, this is still very good. Again, we've been talking about all the sacrifice fodder out there, whether it's that 1-drop we just saw, or Sapperling tokens, or Goblin tokens, or Soldier tokens. There's a lot of things you can sacrifice. And in that case, this card gets bigger, at least temporarily. And if you sack a Sapperling, you also gain life, which is good against aggro. So you're also getting a 3/3 power toughness at its core here for 4 mana. What's nice is if you have some creatures and mana available, your opponent is in a tough position, and they might have to chump block this 3/3 to preserve their life total. It's really not bad considering all the upside attached to it. I like this card a lot, actually. And red has a threatened effect, so I always like being able to steal a creature and then sacrifice it. That's fun. So yeah, a lot of versatility here in this card. It's very good, I think. And it's a common, easy to pick up. Valid Soothsayer. Now here's the payout for sacrifice you really want. It's that uncommon, but if you can pick one or two of these up, you'll be having a good day. Taking those tokens or the small creatures or whatever, sacrificing them for card draw is great. Cost 2 to do it, sack the creature. However, this doesn't tap. Also, you can do it as soon as it comes into play. This is pretty awesome. 2-3 for 4. I mean, the stats are kind of not exciting, of course, but the ability is amazing. So, another good fungus here. And yeah, I'm going to be happy to play this. And if I'm in Rakdos especially, but really, it probably can be any color combination, and I'll be really happy to see this card. Togar, Famine Incarnate. Okay, this is a fine creature, actually. I really like the ability. There's a lot of ways to cast this faster in black, which is pretty awesome. If you can get this thing out fast, it's going to be at its best, because it's a 7/6 with no evasion. That's a little clunky. However, if you can resolve that ability and bring your opponent down to 10 early in the game, that's sweet. Or later in the game, it can bring you up to 10 if that's something that you need to do. So I do like that. Once it's on the battlefield, even though I did maybe sacrifice some things to get it there and sacrificed a little board presence, it is sizable. So at worst, maybe we'll trade for a couple creatures and I'll get some of that advantage back, or at least even things out a little bit, and still got that ability to trigger. And I think that's what I'm thinking about with this card. It's not always going to be perfect. It's not always going to be great for you necessarily, depending on the timing of it. But if you can get it down early, it could be really strong. Urgoros the Empty One. Okay. Now, this card is very reminiscent of Hypnotic Spectre. It's a really big version of that card. Now, the reason Hypnotic Spectre was so good back in its day is because it came out fast. It cost 3, but you could get it out with a Dark Ritual, typically on like turn 1 and attacking on turn 2. So you sometimes actually could start to pick apart your opponent's hand in such a way that it put them indefinitely behind. If you hit a land, for example, that could be backbreaking. Now, that's the advantage of doing this type of thing early. Playing this as a 6-drop, not as exciting. Don't get me wrong, I'm still going to play it. A 4/3 flyer and limited for 6 is still pretty good. I don't like the 3 toughness. I'd rather see a 3/4 flyer. I do feel like it's a little fragile. It could be taken out by a lot of things. A 3 power flyer puts the brakes on this thing. However, I'm still going to go for it, and attacking my opponent, having them discard a card at random, better than having them choose. But at the same time, you're not going to have the same impact as you had with Hypnotic Spectre attacking in on turn 2 or even turn 4 for that matter. So that's a big drawback when it comes to this card. Also, your opponent's not going to let you draw a card. They're going to hang on to lands or whatever they have to discard instead of letting you draw. So even though that seems like it could be good, it's probably never going to happen. So yeah, there you go. Runnable, definitely a fine card. And if your opponent's behind already, this could slam the door on the game. And I do like that. But don't expect this to be your win condition. You want to have some other tricks in your deck. Vicious Offering. Now, this is a good trick to have in your deck. I'd play this all day long. First pickable. Sometimes 2 casting cost, instant, -2/-2. That's good enough. Sacrifice a creature, which again, hopefully won't be a problem in black. And the -5/-5, incredibly relevant for so many things. Really, really awesome removal spell here. It gets around things like Indestructible as well. Whisper Blood Liturgist. Alright, this is a way to reanimate, but it's a really slow, fragile way to reanimate. So you don't want this to be your only reanimation condition in a reanimation deck. Like, you want some other options, right, in your bag of tricks, or else this might kind of fail before it gets off the ground. So here's the problems. 2/2 for 4, very fragile at that point in the game. You can tap it, sacrifice 2 creatures, but you have to wait, of course, till the summoning sickness is over, so you have to come back to your turn. And now you get to sacrifice this and another creature. That's one option, or 2 creatures. And now you get to reanimate if you have a target in your graveyard. So it's really high variance. It's really fragile. It's kind of expensive. But it does the trick if you need these type of spells, right? So it's not a bad thing at all. Like, I would say if you're trying to reanimate, go for it. This will be good. Even if you don't have some crazy big reanimation target, just reanimating an important mid-range creature sometimes is good enough in like Sealed and Trapped. So this can do work for you. Like, don't shy away from it. But again, just set your expectations. If you're trying to reanimate, you don't want this to be the only way to reanimate. Windgrace Acolyte. Okay, this is a 3/2 for 5. It's a cat warrior. I always like that. And this is actually a pretty good card, even though the stats are a little shaky. I mean, a flyer, 3/2 for 5, like, whatever. But the ability's nice because it populates your graveyard and mills yourself for 3, and you gain 3 life, which sometimes is relevant against aggro decks too, so you want to remember that. And it has decent presence in the air. I do like that. It can trade for some larger flyers, or maybe get across some damage. I mean, sometimes black will be scrambling to find flyers here and there, so this is not a horrible one. And again, that milling could be very relevant for what black's trying to do, especially in Golgari colors, but really any colors. This is a really sweet card. I'm happy to play this. Yargle, Glutton of Urborg. Okay. The one thing I saw online, which kind of made me smile, was people calling going 9-3 now in a tournament being Yargled. So I guess that will be a thing, as it should be. First off, this is a frog spirit, and second off, look at that art. Do I need to say more? Is the card good though? Not really. It trades down almost all the time. I mean, if you could give it evasion or something, maybe go for it. But yeah, this isn't all that impressive, quite honestly. I mean, your typical 3-drop is going to be able to trade for this thing. It's just not doing enough, unfortunately. I do like the fact that they made a legendary vanilla creature, though. That's kind of sweet. Yawgmoth's Vile Offering. Okay, here's the legendary sorcery in black, and as a reminder, to cast it, you need to have a legendary creature or planeswalker in play. That's a scary startup cost for some decks, but if you can swing it, this thing is extremely powerful. Put up to 1 target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So that could be your opponent's stuff as well. And then you get to destroy up to 1 target creature or planeswalker and exile this. So that's a gigantic swing for 5 mana. That is incredible. The only problem is the startup cost. If you feel like you're not going to be able to cast this for some reason, then don't run it. But if you feel like you're going to be able to cast this most of the time without a problem, it will be amazing for you. And again, I don't think it's going to be a problem for you considering the packs each have a legendary spot, as well as the pre-release, they're going to give you an extra legendary card. So I feel like it's something that is possible. I wouldn't expect planeswalkers to show up very often, but I think enough legendary creatures will be available, even in sealed, to make this runnable. And if you happen to get it and can cast it, this card will be incredible for you. Garnet the Bloodflame, as we move into multicolor with this Rakdos card. And this is actually a pretty good Rakdos card. I mean, 3/3 flash for 5, not overwhelming, a little bit higher on the curve for a more aggressive deck. But I do like flash, and I love these abilities. All your other creatures get haste exactly where Rakdos wants to be. And then when this enters the battlefield, return to your hand all creature cards in your graveyard that were put there from anywhere this turn. Now, they do go back to your hand, so you will have to recast them or what have you. But still, there's tons of value to be had there. Let's say you have a combat situation. You can trade pretty freely and then play this, get the cards back to your hand, and then eventually replay them. Or sacrifice stuff, as long as it's not tokens, right? Just sacrifice them for benefit and then play this, get them back. And again, you'll have to replay them. But you get to refill out your board state, maybe sacrifice them again even. So yeah, this card is perfect for what black's trying to do, and it feels good with red. Slimefoot the Stowaway. I love this card. Okay, so this really taps into the whole Saproling tribal concept. And it's a fungus card, 2/3 for 3. Whenever a Saproling you control dies, you get to drain a point of life. Plus, it's a mana sink to create Saproling tokens for just 4. This is awesome. Create some tokens, sacrifice them for benefit, drain some life. This thing is an engine on its own. I can't wait to play with this. First pickable, even though it's dual colors, I wouldn't hesitate to first pick this and try to go all in on these Saprolings. I feel like that could be an amazing, amazing build. Even in sealed, you'll find synergies here. Awesome card. Alright, our last card of the day. It's a Jund card. It's a little expensive. It's Dargaz Reincarnated. Now, for Jund colors in 4, that's asking a little bit in sealed and draft. Although green's in there, and a lot of times green does make that a little bit easier. So maybe you could hard cast this from time to time. But this is the perfect reanimation target, is it not? What makes it great is the haste. I reanimate it and I just attack in for 7. 7/7 flying trample haste. And that ability, if it dies, it does have some persistence where it doesn't come back right away, but it eventually comes back. And again, with a haste, that ain't bad. So this card is maybe the best reanimation target in the set, honestly. So when we're talking about reanimation, if you're living the dream, this is the card. It is mythic. You're not going to see it all the time. Most of the time, you'll be reanimating more mid-rangey things probably. But if this ever happens, you're going to be having a real good day, no doubt. All right, with that being said, those are all the cards in black, and a lot of the multicolor cards too. So we'll be back tomorrow. We're going to take a look at all of the red cards. The next day, green. The following day, we'll close things out with the artifacts and the lands, and also Karn on that last day. So until then, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.